Time for Triple Play. 3 stocks we're watching in the final 30 minutes of trading. Today we have NVIDIA, Tesla, and Amazon. My pick is NVIDIA, which reached a peak market cap, not this year, but last year of $834 billion. It is ending the year at $359 billion. That is a drop of over $475 billion or 57%. And not a lot of fun. Well, we do have a lot of fundamental news, but I want to get to our heat maps here and just show some technical analysis.
December 2024. OpenAI announces a partnership that sends shockwaves through Silicon Valley. They're deploying AMD's MI300X accelerators for GPT-5 training, not as a supplement to NVIDIA hardware, as the primary compute infrastructure. 100,000 MI300X chips, custom deployment, multi-year commitment. And here's the kicker. OpenAI claims they're achieving equivalent performance to NVIDIA's H100 at 35% lower total cost of ownership. That's not a small difference. That's the kind of cost advantage that reshapes industries. NVIDIA's stock dropped 7.2% in 2 trading days. Wall Street analysts scramble to revise revenue projections. Because OpenAI isn't just any customer, they're the flagship AI company, the reference implementation. When OpenAI chooses hardware, everyone pays attention, and they just chose AMD. Not for edge cases, not for specific workloads, for training the most important AI model in the world, GPT-5, the successor to GPT-4, the model that will define the next generation of AI capabilities. But this isn't just about one deal. This is about NVIDIA's monopoly cracking. For 2 years, NVIDIA has dominated AI compute with 95% plus market share. H100s were impossible to get. Lead times stretched to 6 to 9 months. Customers paid premiums, accepted whatever terms NVIDIA offered because there were no alternatives. AMD tried competing with MI250X. Didn't gain traction. Performance wasn't competitive. Software ecosystem was immature. Nobody took AMD seriously as an AI compute alternative. That just changed. And when you look at what AMD actually delivered with MI300X, when you see OpenAI's internal benchmarks, when you understand the economics, you realize NVIDIA is facing the first genuine threat to their AI dominance since ChatGPT launched. The monopoly is breaking, and Jensen Huang knows exactly what that means. The MI300X breakthrough that changed everything. Let's talk specs. AMD's MI300X isn't an incremental improvement. It's a different architectural approach. 153 billion transistors, 192 gigabytes of HBM3 memory per chip. That's 50% more memory than NVIDIA's H100, which has 80 gigabytes. Memory bandwidth of 5.3 terabytes per second. That's 30% higher than H100's 3.35 terabytes per second, and power consumption of 750 watts, similar to H100's 700 watts. But here's what matters. The performance per watt and performance per dollar metrics favor AMD significantly. OpenAI's internal testing showed MI300X delivering 1.4 times better performance on large language model training compared to H100 when memory capacity becomes the bottleneck. And for LLMs, memory is always the bottleneck. GPT-4 has 1.76 trillion parameters. Each parameter requires multiple bytes of storage during training, plus gradients, plus optimizer states. The memory requirements are massive. More memory per chip means you can train larger models with fewer chips. Fewer chips means lower cost, lower power, simpler networking, better efficiency. But the real breakthrough is price. NVIDIA's H100 sells for approximately $30,000 to $40,000 per chip, depending on availability and configuration. AMD's MI300X, approximately $18,000 to $23,000. That's 35 to 40% cheaper, for better memory capacity, for competitive performance. The economics are undeniable. If you're training massive models, MI300X offers better value. OpenAI ran the numbers. A 100,000 chip MI300X cluster costs roughly $2 billion. Equivalent H100 cluster, $3.2 billion. That's $1.2 billion in savings. For a startup burning billions in compute costs, that matters. The OpenAI economics that forced the switch. But OpenAI didn't switch just to save money. They switched because their business model depends on cost reduction. GPT-4 training reportedly cost over $100 million. That's compute only. GPT-5 is larger. More parameters, more training data, more compute. Estimates suggest GPT-5 training could cost $500 million to $1 billion in compute alone. At those scales, 35% cost reduction is $175 to $350 million in savings. That's not rounding error. That's the difference between sustainable economics and burning investor money. And it's not just training costs. Inference matters too. Every ChatGPT query costs money. Compute, memory, power. OpenAI processes billions of queries monthly. Inference costs are ongoing, permanent. If AMD hardware reduces inference costs by even 20%, that's tens of millions in monthly savings, hundreds of millions annually. That changes the business model from barely profitable to sustainably profitable. Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, explained it in an interview with The Information. We've been completely dependent on NVIDIA. That dependency created risks. Supply constraints, pricing pressure, technical lock-in. Diversifying our hardware is strategic. AMD gave us performance and economics that make sense. This isn't charity, this is business. We need competition in the AI compute market. NVIDIA's monopoly wasn't healthy for us or the industry. That's diplomatic language. What he's really saying, NVIDIA had us by the throat. We couldn't negotiate, couldn't get enough supply, couldn't control costs. AMD gave us leverage. Now we have options. We're using them. The NVIDIA monopoly that's cracking. For 2 years, NVIDIA has operated with effective monopoly power in AI accelerators. The H100 launched in late 2022. Demand immediately exceeded supply. Lead times stretched. Customers waited months. NVIDIA allocated supply to favored customers, cloud providers, large enterprises. Startups struggled to get allocation. When they did get chips, they paid premiums, sometimes 2 times list price on the secondary market. This monopoly generated massive profits. NVIDIA's data center revenue hit $47.5 billion in fiscal 2024, up from $15 billion in fiscal 2023. That's 217% growth, driven almost entirely by AI accelerator sales. Gross margins exceeded 70%. That's Apple-level profitability on hardware, because NVIDIA could charge whatever they wanted. Customers had no choice. Need to train AI models? Buy H100s. Can't get H100s? Wait, or pay more. But monopolies create vulnerabilities. When one supplier controls the market, customers desperately want alternatives. They'll try anything, accept some compromises, just to have options. AMD saw this opportunity, invested heavily in AI 300X development, focused on the specs that matter for AI: memory capacity, bandwidth, and competitive compute. They didn't need to beat HE100 by 50%. Just be competitive. Good enough. Because good enough at 35% lower cost is extremely attractive when the monopoly supplier can't deliver chips fast enough. OpenAI's switch validates AMD as a legitimate alternative. That's the real threat to NVIDIA. Not that AMD won one customer, that AMD proved they can compete. Other customers will look at OpenAI's deployment, see that it works, see the cost savings. They'll run their own evaluations. Many will switch partially or fully to AMD. NVIDIA's monopoly erodes. Pricing power declines. Margins compress. The extraordinary profitability of the last 2 years? Unsustainable once competition exists. The software ecosystem that AMD. The Jensen Huang strategy shift. Jensen Huang isn't panicking publicly, but NVIDIA's strategy is shifting. They're emphasizing software more. announced expanded CUDA support, new AI frameworks, developer tools, trying to deepen the moat where they still have advantage. Hardware can be copied. Software ecosystems take longer to replicate. NVIDIA is betting that CUDA's maturity and ubiquity will keep customers even if AMD hardware is competitive. They're also accelerating custom silicon for cloud providers. Announced partnerships with Microsoft, AWS, and Google to develop custom AI chips. This is defensive. Cloud providers want alternatives. NVIDIA is offering to help them build proprietary chips. Keep them in NVIDIA's ecosystem. Even if they diversify to AMD, keep NVIDIA in the mix. Don't let AMD become sole supplier. It's smart strategy, but it reveals vulnerability. NVIDIA wouldn't be doing this if they felt secure. Huang is also talking more about full-stack solutions, not just selling chips, selling complete AI infrastructure, DGX systems, software, support, services, trying to create differentiation beyond raw chip specifications. Because if competition is only about chips, AMD can compete. If competition is about complete solutions with deep integration and support, NVIDIA's experience matters more. That's where they want the battle fought. But there's tension in this strategy. Large customers don't want full-stack solutions from one vendor. They want best-of-breed components, flexibility, control. NVIDIA pushing full-stack solutions might work for mid-market customers who want simplicity. Doesn't work for OpenAI, Microsoft, Google. They want to build their own stacks, with components from multiple vendors, including AMD. NVIDIA's strategic shift acknowledges they're losing the component battle, but the solution selling approach might not work for their largest customers. What happens next? The AI compute market is entering a new phase. NVIDIA's monopoly is over. Competition exists. AMD is legitimate. Chinese domestic suppliers are advancing. Intel has Gaudi accelerators coming. The market is diversifying. That's healthy for customers. Challenging for NVIDIA. They're still the leader, but being the leader in a competitive market is different from being a monopoly. Revenue growth slows, margins compress, profitability normalizes, stock valuation comes down. NVIDIA's data center revenue will still grow. AI demand is increasing faster than competition can capture. The total addressable market is expanding, but NVIDIA's share of that market is shrinking. 2025 revenue might be $80 to $90 billion. Still massive, but not the $120+ billion analysts projected when NVIDIA had monopoly. The competition cost them $30 to $40 billion in revenue, and market cap reflects that. NVIDIA stabilizes around $2 to $2.5 trillion valuation. Still one of the world's most valuable companies. Not worth more than Apple, Microsoft, and Saudi Aramco combined like it briefly was. AMD's opportunity is enormous. If they execute well, they can reach 20 to 25% market share by 2026. That's $40 to $50 billion in annual data center revenue for AMD, compared to $6 billion in 2023. That's life-changing growth for AMD. Stock will reflect it. AMD might become a trillion-dollar company if they capture sustainable share in AI compute. That's the prize they're fighting for. For customers, this is unambiguously positive. Competition means better availability, better pricing, more innovation, choice. Organizations can multi-source, negotiate, optimize. The monopoly era hurt customers. The competitive era helps them. OpenAI's switch to AMD catalyzed this transition. Other customers will benefit. The lesson for monopolies. This is what happens to monopolies. They're never permanent. High margins attract competition. Supply constraints motivate customers to find alternatives. When alternatives emerge, customers switch fast. Pent-up frustration from monopoly pricing and allocation games converts to rapid adoption of competitive options. The monopoly erodes quickly. NVIDIA dominated AI compute for 2 years. Those 2 years might be the peak. Going forward is competition, slower growth, compressed margins. NVIDIA isn't failing. They're transitioning from extraordinary to very good. That's still excellent, but the stock price reflected extraordinary, Now it has to reflect very good. That means lower valuation. The company remains strong. The opportunity remains massive, but the monopoly is gone. Jensen Huang knows this. The strategy shifts reflect it. NVIDIA is adapting to a competitive market, something they haven't faced in AI compute before. If this opened your eyes to what's happening in AI hardware, share it, because this is the biggest shift in AI infrastructure since ChatGPT launched. NVIDIA's monopoly breaking. AMD emerging as legitimate competitor. The economics of AI training changing. Costs declining. Competition increasing. This impacts everyone building AI. Understanding the hardware landscape matters. NVIDIA versus AMD isn't just chip company rivalry. It's about who controls the infrastructure of the AI revolution. And right now, that control is shifting. NVIDIA's losing exclusivity. The market is opening up. What happens next will determine the structure of the AI industry for the next decade.